Well, good morning. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out this morning as we announce our new chief of police for the Albuquerque Police Department. We have completed the selection process for our new chief for the Albuquerque Police Department, and I have to say we had an impressive and long list of applicants for this job. We had over 44 individuals from all over the United States, many of whom have long and distinguished careers in law enforcement, apply for this prestigious position and important position for our city. And I think that's a testament to the Albuquerque Police Department, to the men and women who serve, to the way that this department is perceived around the United States as a top-notch law enforcement organization, and I'm really pleased about that. We had a national search firm help us with this search, Ralph Anderson and Associates, in particular Robert Berg, who led this search from start to finish. And I can tell you they did a tremendous job. It was a good value that we received for doing a national search for the Albuquerque Police Chief. They did their job. They did it well. They helped us with the vetting process. They brought an objective nature to the process that I really wanted to have. So we want to thank them as well. And as I said earlier, the short list of candidates that were provided to me through the screening and vetting process included 3 incredibly experienced law enforcement executives. Each one was a stellar candidate. We had interviews yesterday with our selection team, our search team, along with Mr. Perry, my CAO, and Mr. Berg. And I can tell you we had 3 individuals who had the absolute capability of stepping up and running this department at a very high level from day one. But one of our candidates in particular stood out, and that gentleman is with me here today. His name is Gorden Eden Jr., and I'm proud and honored to announce Gorden as the next Chief of Police for the Albuquerque Police Department. He's joined today by his beautiful wife Mary, his daughter Renee, and his son Josh. And I also want to introduce Deputy Chief Mac Page, who's with us today, Deputy Chief Eric Garcia, and Commander Mike Miller. These gentlemen, among some of the other command staff at the Albuquerque Police Department, were informed this morning about the selection. They met with Mr. Eden, and my understanding is we had a tremendously productive and good meeting. Gordon's the right man for the job at the right time. He rose to the top because of his exceptional resume, having served under 2 New Mexico gubernatorial appointments, 2 governors, including his most current job that he sits in today, which is the Cabinet Secretary of the New Mexico Department of Public Safety. As such, he oversees a $140 million budget with over 1,300 employees, many of which are sworn law enforcement officers, including the New Mexico State Police Department. Gordon also served 8 years with distinction as the U.S. Marshal for the state of New Mexico. And in his role, he certainly brought thousands of fugitives to justice throughout the state of New Mexico. He brings a wealth of knowledge, having served as the director of the School of Police Staff and Command at Northwestern University, regarded by many as the premier executive training, management training program for law enforcement in the United States. He's a 3rd-generation New Mexican, and he started his law enforcement career carrying a gun and wearing a badge as a state patrol officer in 1975. He knows this job from every level, from being a cop to being an executive to being a cabinet secretary, and just, in fact, being a great leader. But in addition to his vast experience as a career crime fighter and knowledge relating to modern-day police leadership, Gordon's desire to serve is a calling based on his love for the city of Albuquerque, and I can tell you that's one of the things that really stood out for myself, and I believe for the selection committee, was his passion for this city, and he'll speak to that in just a moment. And that really came out on top of his expertise as a law enforcement professional. He understands the issues, he understands the concerns, and I believe he's a perfect balance of expertise and heart for the job. Gordon will be sworn in prior to Chief Banks' retirement on February 27th, and he will earn an annual salary of $158,000. Please help me congratulate Gorden Eden Jr. as the next Chief of the Albuquerque Police Department.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the mayor for giving me this opportunity. As I look around the room, I recognize many friends and people that I've had the privilege of working with for years. As the mayor said, I'm very passionate about the city that I live in. I grew up in this town. I raised my children. My wife and I raised our children in this town. They went to school here. They're both in college here. And when you grow up in a community and you have a heart for the community, you care about every function. And I care about the men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department. When I met with the staff this morning, I told them that my first association with the Albuquerque Police Department was when I was about 17 years old. And I was one of the first members of the Explorer Post program that was started here with Albuquerque. It was called Explorer Post 911. There was a patrol officer by the name of Billy Ross who passed away just last year in a terrible car crash. And Billy and his wife Maxine were two of my closest friends, but they mentored me as a young adult and really helped me. And I had a choice which law enforcement agency I wanted to go to work for, the Albuquerque Police Department or the New Mexico State Police, and I chose the New Mexico State Police. And it was by no matter of coincidence that I was transferred back to Albuquerque and actually worked in the South Valley where I grew up. And it gave me that strong sense of community as a state police officer working in the neighborhood where I grew up. So I really care about Albuquerque. I care about the citizens. And I pledged to the mayor that I would help him accomplish our top 3 priorities, which is recruitment and retention. We have a wonderful police department. We have great leaders within our police department, and I'm going to demand that their leadership rise to the top and that we work together on the recruitment and retention. I've also assured the mayor that I will reach out to the community and make sure that the community is fully engaged in the Albuquerque Police Department. We cannot make this and continue to make this a great city if we try to do it by ourselves. And the last thing I want to do is build a leadership structure within the Albuquerque Police Department to make sure that there's no gaps or voids in leadership. It's the most important thing you can do in any organization, and that's my goal. I didn't come here to retire. I came here to work. I came here to give the city and the mayor and this community everything that I've got as the police chief. And I want to thank the mayor. I also want to thank my family. My kids, when they were young and started driving, I was the motor vehicle director. Do you know what it's like to go through driver's ed and your dad's the motor vehicle director? Do you know what it's like to grow up and then your dad's the U.S. Marshal and you don't know what's waiting around the corner for you? But I've had the greatest support from my wife. We've been together for 35 years, and it's a great relationship that I have with her, and she's my best friend. And I want to thank most of you in this room. I am where I am today because you understand the complexities of law enforcement. I am where I am because despite the good and the bad, we still stand together making sure that we're going to make Albuquerque the premier city. And I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mayor.
We'll be happy to take questions.
Awesome for Gordon Eden. Why
Yep.
did you want to change paths? You were doing well at DPS, everything was running smoothly. On the heels of the DOJ announcement coming up, why would you want to take this on?
Actually, I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to take it on. I think all of us are completely, I wouldn't say lost. I think we are not going to know what the DOJ results are. And I think we don't want to stay in a position where we're doing nothing, waiting for somebody to publish a report. I think that's one of the reasons why. I think, regardless of what the report says, that we're going to build a strong team, a strong leadership team within the Albuquerque Police Department, and we're going to take the department well beyond any findings that the Department of Justice has.
Why you? Why did you want to take this job?
As I said, it's my city, it's my town, it's where I grew up. And I've known many of the men and women in the Albuquerque Police Department, and I know that they're great people. More important, I know that they have a servant's heart. Nobody comes to work for a police department if they don't have a servant's heart. It's certainly not for the money. And I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to go ahead and apply for the position.
What deficiencies do you recognize in the department today, and what are your plans to sort of address those?
Well, I think the biggest deficiency right now is the numbers. And I think we have to rethink and relook at the way we recruit, number one. And then number two is, how do we build a structure within the training process that we have top-notch people graduate, complete, come to work, go through the FTO, the Field Training Officer program, and they complete that program well. And then the retention part of it is building career paths. I think that there's always a certain number of people that are perfectly satisfied being a patrol officer their entire career. But there's other people that want to go into leadership. And so what we have to do is create that path for them. That's the key to retention.
When it comes to the DOJ investigation, you specifically said you don't want to be reactive, you want to be more proactive. So can you give us some of those actual concrete plans you have to revamp the leadership?
Well, I wouldn't say it's to revamp the leadership, it's to strengthen the leadership. And one of the things I found out very early in my career is the way you strengthen leadership is you've got to give people those leadership tools. You have to have people that are there that are available to mentor those new leaders. And it's a combination of training, education, and then the support that they need from the structure above and below them. And that's one of the things I'm going to work very diligently to do.
And you think that will address the problems that the DOJ is, looking into?
I don't know if that will address the problems that DOJ is specifically looking into, but I know it's the core of any organization, no matter where you work, is you have to build a strong leadership structure.
And then when it comes to recruitment specifically, what do you plan to do with that?
Well, first of all, I need to look to find out what they're doing as far as recruiting. The New Mexico State Police, which I oversee, is actually, they're about 12th, 13th, or 14th, depending upon what you look at as far as pay structure in the state of New Mexico. They're not paid very well at all. So I know that pay isn't an issue, and the reason I know that is when we have 1,300 people fill out interest cards and want to become police officers, and then we go through the screening process and we have 60 people that are willing and able to go to work despite the pay, and then despite the fact that their duty stations are in remote locations. There's a great pool out there. So that's one of the things I need to look at is what are we doing right, and then what are we doing wrong, and then let's build a new recruiting model and a retention model.
How did you go about deciding?
Can we do just some other questions as well?
How do you think that your experience in federal law enforcement and with the state will inform your approach as an APD chief?
Well, policing is in fact policing, regardless if you're with the state police or with federal law enforcement. It's those core values, and it's our core system to be responsive to the needs of people, and that's what law enforcement is all about. And as I said earlier, the men and women of law enforcement, regardless of the uniform that they wear, are there for the perfect reason, and that is to serve and then to protect. And that's why I say I know that the men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department have those servant hearts. And what we're going to do is just continue to build up that department. Where my knowledge of what the Albuquerque Police Department does is that when I was transferred to Albuquerque, I interacted daily with the men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department. And then when I was transferred to Santa Fe and put in the training and recruiting division, one of my jobs was to come to the Albuquerque Police Department. I actually taught in their training academy for many years. And as the U.S. Marshal for 8 years, we worked very closely, day in and day out, with the Albuquerque Police Department, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and the New Mexico State Police, to build a really strong multi-jurisdictional policing model.
Let me just add to that a little bit, Dan. One of the things that I think that Gordon brings from that standpoint is, being familiar with and acquainted with and having those bridges built between federal, state, and local, I think is really important. Let me give you an example of this. When Gordon was the U.S. Marshal, that is actually part of the Department of Justice.
Correct.
And so from the DOJ investigation side, there's bridges that are already there. Also, when I first took over as mayor, we had to address a very serious situation where the city of Albuquerque back in the 1990s was charged, so to speak, by the DOJ of misusing some funds with the COPS program. And so early on, as a mayor, I had to make a decision: do you want to pay $6 million back, or do you want to go on a 4-year probation? We're coming off of that probation now. It should have been handled years ago, but it wasn't. So now we're in a situation where we can build some new bridges with the COPS program. That means funding for our city. That means things, resources, and I believe that Gorden brings those connections that are going to be really valuable to us. Plus the fact that so much of what we do today is multi-jurisdictional between state, federal, local, the sheriff's department, and the police department. Take the Chase incident, for example. We had the active shooter in Albuquerque. That was BCSO, and Deputy Hopkins was so badly injured in that. But we also had the police working with that, and I think he brings those connections as well. Sorry, Stu.
Thanks, Mayor. No, Chief, do you feel perhaps that you are accepting an unusual challenge here, becoming police chief in a city that is unusually violent and gun happy, even in the American West?
I don't know if that was a question or a statement. So, I think one of the things we just need to remember is that this is our town, this is our city, and I think one of the things we have to do is work together as a community to build a stronger community. And the police department has never been able to do that by themselves. And that's one of the things that I want to do, is to go out and build those bridges. When I was a United States Marshal, as the mayor said, that's one of the things I did. I went out, and for most of you, you thought the Marshal Service didn't even exist anymore. And what I did is I took that organization and we started working with the other organizations. And what you don't know is that behind the scenes, we were working with faith-based organizations. We did one of the first fugitive safe surrenders down in Las Cruces. Since you're Albuquerque media, you didn't even have any idea that we were doing that. So those are the type of relationships that make cities great. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to build those relationships, build those bridges, and build a stronger Albuquerque Police Department.
Secretary Eden, how do you change the reputation of the department with the community?
I can't change that reputation. We have to do it together. And that includes needing your help. We do need the media help. Every day, these men and women put their lives on the line, and every day they work very, very hard to do a great job. And I think one of the things that you as the media could do is help us with those stories. There's great successes every day, and every day they go out and they do put their lives on the line. And I remember when the community came together during a very tragic event where we had so many people killed by one single killer. And the city came together and they understood how hard it is to be a police officer, and how difficult it is when you knock at the door that you have no idea what's behind that door. But this city, and especially the media, rallied around the police department. And we need that every day. And so one of the things we will do is we will be pushing to the media those great success stories to let you know about the fine men and women of the police department.
One thing you also have in your possession today is Mr. Eden's resume, but you also have his plan for the first 100 days as well. And I think that's important. And that was part of our selection process in bringing a new chief in, is looking at a 100-day plan. So you also have that. Let's go here.
Secretary, can you talk a little bit about the recent raster shootings in state police, first off? And second, how do you feel you're leaving the DPS as secretary as you take on this new opportunity here?
Well, first, leaving the Department of Public Safety, I do so with mixed emotion. I do. The men and women of the Department of Public Safety are wonderful people. The rash of shootings that we have seen, not only with the New Mexico State Police, we're seeing with all police departments throughout the United States. I think that is an indication of a lack of respect for each other. It's a lack of respect for human dignity. I believe there's a trial going on in another state right now where there was a gun battle over loud music. Those are things that, sadly, that few of us have any control over except the person who starts that aggression. And when you speak to the incidents of the shootings, whether it's the Las Cruces Police Department, Roswell, Taos, it doesn't matter, Santa Fe, it doesn't matter. I think it just speaks to the lack of respect and the dignity that we have for human life.
I think this department's been criticized over the last few years at least over a lack of transparency by many groups. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have any plans to change that, or even releasing more lapel cam video, whether it's something like that, or do you have any thoughts on lack of?
I think one of the first things I need to do is become fully aware of all the policies and procedures when it comes to that material. I think we have to make sure that we are transparent. But sometimes there may be a certain case or incident where we can't provide you with information as quickly as you need it because we need that information to either advance a case or to look at officer conduct. And I will be a transparent police chief. I can tell you right now that the way my phone's going off, and you guys are sitting in here, that there's a lot of people that do have my cell phone number. It was ringing last night, and that's one of the things. I think what's most important is we're going to do our best to provide you with the right information as soon as we have it. And you're going to have to understand that sometimes us pushing out the right information is the most critical part of what we do. Whether it's an active shooter situation or any situation that we go to, we want to be right. I think we owe it to you because you're going to be reporting it to the public, so we have to be right when we give it to you.
How do you address morale with the department? What are you gonna do to try to boost morale?
By being a chief that is 100% approachable. I'm that way right now. I've been that way regardless of where I've worked. One of my first actions will be to visit with every working man and woman of the Albuquerque Police Department, including the civilians. I'm going to ask them what are their top 3 concerns, and then what would they like to see happen. And then from that, we're going to start looking at how we operate and how we work.
And how do you restore public trust? I know that the media certainly plays a role in some of that, but within the department.
By being active with them. And I think that I've got a really good team that's standing behind me right now. I think they're still right there. Yeah. We have one that's off at the National Academy right now. He's in the 4th week. And I think that together, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're in constant contact with the men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department. Their ability to express concerns or change, that's what really boosts morale. And it doesn't matter where I've worked. By having that open door policy and that commitment to make that job or their job a better place to work, that's what I pledge to them.
What about with the community, though?
Again, I get back to what I said earlier, is that being out with the community, out visiting with all the neighborhood associations, the faith-based organizations, the professional organizations, and I think that's a critical first step.
I have a question for the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Eden has deep experience in state and federal law enforcement, but not with a big metropolitan police department the way your 2 other finalists did.
Sure.
Is that a weakness? Can you
Look, one of the things that I talked to Rob Perry about in our national search firm when we started this process is I said, I want the best fit. Now, everybody's going to bring different skill sets to the table, different experiences to the table. Of our 3 finalists, we had 2 finalists that are currently, wearing a badge and a gun. They're out there on the front lines every day. Great technical expertise as well. What Gorden brings to the table is having carried a badge and a gun, having been a cop for over a decade, I believe, or during his career, but also bringing in this expertise from a leadership standpoint. Let me put it this way. we take it to a football analogy, which I'm always horrible at doing. You know, you need to have a good offensive coordinator. You need to have a good defensive coordinator. You need people that have the skill sets to run the department on a day-to-day basis. I've got some gentlemen behind me here that are absolutely stellar at what they do, okay? They know what they're doing from a day-to-day operational standpoint. I need a head coach. I need somebody to come into the Albuquerque Police Department and act in that role as a head coach. So whether he has yesterday's experience as an on-the-street law enforcement officer, that wasn't the most important thing to me. I wanted the best fit, and I think I've got a great leader to come into the Albuquerque Police Department, work with ladies and gentlemen that work at the department that are technical experts. He's certainly a technical expert as well in many regards. I don't want to discount his experience there, but I think that's why at the end of the day, and I believe Mr. Perry could confirm this, but between the selection team rankings that were done separately from what I did, I believe Mr. Eden ranked number 1 on all those as well. So I think it's a best fit situation.
The decision seems to be made quickly. I think the dates were, you guys were moving up the close date, I think, to the 10th, but you guys were going to take resumes through the 15th, which is obviously tomorrow. It
Well,
just seems
Well, one of the things, well, actually, we've been working on this recruitment for months and months. So this has been an ongoing process. We had over 44 applicants. Those applicants have been vetted by the search firm over the past weeks and months as well as they've come in. When Chief Banks, and we congratulate him for his opportunity that he has in Texas, when he announced his retirement date of the 27th of February, that did accelerate the closing date process a little bit and bump the process up slightly. But I can tell you, I don't have any concerns about the thoroughness of the process. I actually sat in yesterday with the interviews myself that were conducted by Mr. Perry in the search firm. I got a chance to ask a couple of my own questions as well. And then we met with the team yesterday as well, and it became fairly obvious fairly quickly that we had 3 great candidates, but we had the one that really rose to the top. So I'm absolutely comfortable with the process and where we are today.
Can you address settlements? I know past policy has been we just don't settle cases, whether it's an officer-involved shooting.
Yep.
Is that going to change?
We've been criticized by judges for doing that. I mean, the last administration made a decision to not settle suits. What that did is it pushed a lot of those suits right into our administration. And that was a prerogative that they had, and we're not complaining about that. That was their decision. What I've told Mr. Perry and our risk management group that we have at the City of Albuquerque, and that won't change, is look at each case individually, get the best advice you can legally and from a risk management standpoint, make the best day-to-day decisions that you can with the facts and the circumstances that you have, whether it was a case that happened before I was a mayor or whether it's something that happened while I was a mayor. That shouldn't really be the point. What we want to try to do is I'm in a second and final term as I self-imposed a term limit. And we want to make sure that we hand it off to the next administration, maybe with not as much backup as we saw when we walked in the door. So it'll be a case-by-case basis, and that's the only way we can do it. I think when you start laying down, lines in the sand about what we will and what we won't do before you know individual circumstances of individual situations, I think that's a mistake in my opinion.
Now, Chief, this is obviously something you will have to deal with as chief, and that's the Amari Varela case. Can you just talk to me about your first impressions of that, and then also what you can do to make sure something like that doesn't happen again?
Well, first of all, I need to say this, is that the only information I have on that case is what has been in the media. But I can tell you that in conversations that I've already had with the mayor, is that we have to move forward with this task force. We can't let our children fall through the cracks. And it doesn't matter how the crack got there. We've got to figure out a better way to monitor those calls for service. We're going to have to build a partnership between not only the Albuquerque Police Department, but all police departments in this state with CYFD. So there's no finger pointing, but there's referrals, there's cooperation, and these cases are thoroughly investigated.
Early next week, Mr. Perry and I will stand with you all and announce to you the makeup of our task force, which will actually end up being a consortium. Mr. Perry is quite a ways down the road with that. We are not ready to make that announcement yet, but we are taking that seriously, and it will be a very robust process, I promise you, and we look forward to sharing with you next week some of the leadership team that Mr. Perry's putting together to do that, not all of which is put together at this point, so if you can bear with us, early in the week we'll be talking about that, but that will be an announcement for next week and how we're going to go about that process, both from looking at internal procedures, but also looking at collaborative opportunities between agencies, between cities, between the state and local, and maybe even some federal resources, and those in our community also who make it their life's work and their passion to help children, all face receiving home, and some of the professionals that work there. So we'll look forward to talking to you about that next week as well. And then one of the first orders of business for Chief Eden will be to work with Mr. Perry on that, and I'll be involved with that as a mayor as well.
Mr. Mayor, any concern about partisanship? You're a Republican, our new chief, appointed by a Republican governor. Sometimes these nonpartisan races become Republican, as you know, become partisan. Any concern about that?
No, I couldn't tell you what the relationship or what party the two other candidates were. That was not a place to fill that in the box. I mean, I've got my constituent services director, Mr. Alan Armijo, right here, former Democrat elected official at both the city and the county level. He's the best man for the job to be my constituent services director. When I was first elected as a first Republican mayor in 30 years, first guy I hired was Dave Campbell, a Democrat. Took some. Raised some eyebrows when we did that. To me, it doesn't matter. You're either the right man or woman for the job, or you're not. And Mr. Eden's the right man for the job.